Joining me is the panel. Daisy Cousins, contributor to Spectator Australia and Quadra magazine, and Simon Breheny, Director of Policy at the Institute of Public Affairs. Daisy, Tony Abbott had only minor injuries to his lip. But is this what this debate has come to now?
Well, it appears that it has, Andrew. I mean, I only just heard this news. It happened so recently, and it beggars belief. And look, here's the thing. The argument that the Yes campaign will put forward to somewhat condone this is that as LGBT people, they've suffered all manner of violence and all manner of bullying growing up, etc., etc. So this is an okay thing. Here's the problem with that argument, aside from the fact that it's rubbish. If you are claiming to be on the side of peace and love and tolerance, then why on earth would you turn that into a campaign about retribution, which is what I think this has come to. If you claim to be about peace, love and tolerance, turn the other cheek, as Jesus said. You know, I don't know why you would dissolve to that level when that's clearly what you want to stand against. It's just, I'm flabbergasted. I'm trying to process this. I'm disgusted.
Me too.
Oh.
Simon, look, you know, I'll be fair, there's nothing to suggest this guy was someone who was instrumental in the campaign. He just wore a badge, right? So I don't know what his agenda was specifically.
Yeah.
But I have to ask you, would it be likely that a politician who said yes to same-sex marriage would get attacked in the street like Tony Abbott was?
No, of course not. Of course not. And I think that this is indicative of a couple of things, but when it comes to the same-sex marriage debate, it's clearly indicative of the fact that culturally it's not only acceptable to be on the yes side of the debate, but in fact that's what's expected. And that there are, this is not the first time we've seen this. Of course, on campus at Sydney University, we saw some pretty extraordinary scenes taking place when some peaceful no campaigners were on campus and were attacked for that. This is, I think, a continuation, though, of the idea that words are violence, and that if there are people on the other side of the debate to you and they are saying things and they hold an opinion which is different from yours, you are justified in going out and violently attacking them for that, because their opinions and their views and their words are the same as literally attacking someone violently. And I just think that that sort of ideology is something that we've got to push back against. And I think that if we don't push back against it, we're going to see much more of this sort of thing happening.
Look, Daisy, you suggested one way that the Yes campaign might try to minimise what happened. I think probably, isn't it a more likely one that they'll say, oh yes, we don't condone it, but this shows how stupid it was to have a public debate where passions would be inflamed like this. When you see this and you see the other examples of violence, Simon referred to a couple, does that make you think we shouldn't have held the plebiscite, or is it in fact exposing something we needed to know?
I think it's exposing something we needed to know. I mean, I understand the arguments for having the plebiscite and the arguments against having the plebiscite, but the bottom line is this is an issue that means an awful lot to an awful lot of people on both sides of the debate, and there's a lot of emotion behind it as well. There's a real emotional attachment to this issue. However, as Simon has said, culturally, we know what view is acceptable to hold. We know what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say. You're only allowed to publicly support same-sex marriage. If you come out the other way, well, you're subject to all manner of threats, all manner of criticism, all manner of trolling. And I think this idea of words as violence, I think, Simon, you have a really good point there. I think we can see more of this happening. We honestly can. I mean, you look at the States, for instance. It's the same over there. But I'm having trouble processing this. I'm disappointed because I have great faith in the Australian people that this could have been a civil debate. It could have been an interesting debate, an intellectual debate, but it's descended into something that did not need to happen, and it saddens me. It really does.
But if you both agreed, Simon, that we're likely to see more of this sort of thing. I mean, the hate rhetoric is just extraordinary. It raises an issue, and not just this particular attack, but generally. Tony Abbott is a former Prime Minister. He walks around the street as a target, and he is not given AFP protection. He loses that. In America, a former president for life gets protection. Well, we don't.
Well, I think he should.
Are we in dream world here?
Yeah, look, I think it's a bit strange, frankly. I think he should have one. I don't think that you know, it's true that some prime ministers, when they aren't prime ministers anymore, fade from the public spotlight. But I don't think that we should rely on that as being the way that we're going to protect people who have been in the public eye for a long time, who've had pretty significant public profiles. And I think in this case it's appropriate that he has an AFP officer, as you do as a Prime Minister, have someone to provide that level of protection, because clearly in cases like this it's necessary to do that. But I don't, you know, this idea that we should be, that this comes back to whether or not we should have had the plebiscite, frankly I think is quite a disgraceful excuse to use on the part of those who engage in violent conduct. Yeah,
well, I'll be interviewing Abbott on my radio show tonight. Daisy, we heard Mark Latham earlier say that the AFL was right out of order to take a collective position on same-sex marriage, when really it's up to the fans to decide for themselves. Who's the AFL to tell them where they should vote? What do you think?
Well, look, I think, you know, a business like the AFL has a right to present itself to the public however it wants. So if the AFL decides that it thinks it's a good idea to come out in favour of the yes vote and put a giant yes sign out the front of the headquarters, they can do that. That's fine. However, the question becomes whether or not that is a good business decision, because not everyone agrees with the yes vote. There will be a lot of fans who either are on the no camp or centrists who are apolitical, who are so sick and tired of having this propaganda thrown in their faces. It's going to amount to a lot of backlash. So if you are a business, you have to decide, well, do we stick our necks out for something we believe in and risk polarising a whole lot of fans, or do we acknowledge that this isn't our job? It's not our job to dictate public opinion. It's our job to be, if anything, an escape from the politics and the issues of the day. So, yep, look, if they want to do that, they can do it, but as to whether or not it was a good business decision for a business to make, I don't know. I don't think so.
I think this is a shocking decision by the AFL, and I wish that they would get out of the game of, you know, virtue signalling is the term that's thrown around these days. But this is such a clear example of a business choosing to go down the path of saying, you know, we think that we're on the right side of history. We think polling's moving in a certain direction, and that's the side that we're going to jump on. My understanding is that this was a decision that was made by Gillan McLachlan, that it was a decision that came from the very top of the AFL, and I think it's a shocker, frankly. It's got nothing to do with the AFL. It's got nothing to do with the core business of the AFL. Daisy's right. Businesses should be free to engage in any sort of conduct they like, and if they want to put their views on a particular matter, if, you know, a business wants to go out there and argue for industrial relations reform or lower taxes, you know, those are things that directly affect the business. Where they get into really difficult territory is where they start doing things like what the AFL has done here and getting on one side or other of the same-sex marriage debate. That's got nothing to do with the players, it's got nothing to do with the fans, it's got nothing to do with the clubs, and I think that the AFL should have stayed totally out of this debate. On either side, you know, frankly, I wouldn't be that impressed if they were on the no side.
No, but I think that's right.
I think either way, have steered clear altogether.
But Daisy, I just wonder. You mentioned actually the AFL mentioned a branding exercise, as did you. That's why I wanted to do it. Branding is one of the reasons I wanted to do that. Is just recently had to fire, or decided it had to fire, 2 senior executives for sleeping with junior staff. So now, don't hit me. I'm up for same-sex marriage. I'm a goodie.
God. Well, it's interesting. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, citizens should have the right to do what they want to do. I mean, those executives being fired for sleeping with junior female members of staff, look, that's a private matter. That's a personal matter, you know, and to put some sort of, you know, you know, inhibitive measures in place for that would seem to be a little bit ridiculous and a little bit invasive. It's really
yes.
and it's insulting to the young women involved. Aside from anything else, I mean, those are they're their own decisions. They made their decisions, and to, you know, it's well, I don't like any of it.
It shows, Daisy, they are fascinated by the sexual lives of others.
Oh,
when
yes.
They're a sporting organisation.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Listen, I've got to ask you this, Simon. One Nation Senator Malcolm Roberts had an absolute shocker in the High Court today. He's one of 7 MPs that are going before the High Court to decide whether they are unlawfully elected as dual citizens. Now, he is a former, it turns out he was a British citizen at the time of his nomination, but he said he never considered himself British, because if he had, this is some of his evidence, if he had, his father would have teased him. He said that he didn't fill in at the age of 19 a document saying he was a British citizen, which would have alerted him to this, because his sister, who was 16, filled it out instead for him, and he just signed it because his parents told him to. And then when he did try to renounce his British citizenship as a senator, he sent to email addresses that were either defunct or clearly did not exist before finally getting one right. Boy, Malcolm Roberts didn't do himself many favours, did he?
Yeah, so here's the key problem with Malcolm Roberts' evidence today. Everything basically hinges on the fact that he didn't believe himself to be a British citizen. He said that today in the court. He said that previously. He didn't believe he was a British citizen. Now, that's believable if you then don't send emails saying, can I renounce my British citizenship, you know, to a couple of email addresses that were defunct, but that's by the by. If he truly didn't believe that he held British citizenship, why take that second step of saying, can I renounce this thing that I don't have? So, you know, frankly, I think it's a credibility issue. I think when it comes to making a decision on Malcolm Roberts' eligibility, the court is probably going to look at what Malcolm Roberts had to say in court today and potentially dismiss or, you know, some of that evidence that he gave today might actually be...
Well, that's a pity, because I think Malcolm Roberts is an interesting little fighter and all that, but boy, Daisy, this was not a good day for him.
No, it wasn't a good day for him, and just the way the whole thing was conducted, it didn't make him look very good. I mean, it doesn't sound good. I mean, I can understand his 16-year-old sister filling out the form. As he said, she did act as a scribe. I get that. I can get his father putting a form in front of him and saying, sign this, and him feeling like he has to. I get all of that.
My wife does it to me all the time.
Exactly. 50-something, yes. What I don't understand, though, what I don't understand, though, is how he could have sent 2 emails to defunct email addresses in this day and age and not have realised.
No, you're right. Daisy Cousins, Simon Breheny, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.